What's good, everybody? Greg Hickman here. And in this episode, I want to talk to you about building your primary sales funnel. And then in another episode, we're going to talk about your secondary sales funnel. Wait, what? There's a primary and a secondary? Let's dive in. For 3 years, my agency built funnels and automation systems for the biggest names in marketing today. Since then, I've transformed that agency into a hyper-profitable training and consulting business. While everyone is out there talking about scale like it's some sort of destination, we'll be asking the real question. How do you transform your business into a more scalable model using the knowledge, skills, and expertise that you already have? This podcast is here to give you the answer. Join me and follow along as I learn, apply, and share the strategies I'm using to build my multi-million-dollar business. My name is Greg Hickman, and welcome to Scalable. All right, guys. So like I said, there's a primary and a secondary sales funnel. And there's a reason why we need a primary and a secondary sales funnel. I'm going to share a study that I learned by a guy by the name of Dean Jackson, who's like the OG of marketing. He's actually the designer of what was once called the squeeze page, which is now the originator of the squeeze page, which is now the landing page. And I'm going to share a study that kind of breaks down why you need a primary and why you need a secondary. And having invested in a lot of these online programs and hiring consultants and coaches, a lot of people right now are talking about, hey, this simple 2-step funnel, right? You probably heard about it or heard someone talking about, hey, or you don't need a funnel or a simple funnel or blah, 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 like simplifying the funnel. Well, most of those people are talking about the primary funnel, which is great. And you need the primary funnel. Don't get me wrong. It's going to help accelerate those people, the sales for people that are product or problem aware, solution aware, and already ready to get going. But there's also the people that aren't going to buy right away. And actually that's majority of the people. So if you want to maximize your revenue, maximize the value of every lead that comes in through the door. So if you're spending money on Facebook ads and 10% convert, well, what about those 90%? We'll talk about that in the secondary funnel, right? But we need the primary funnel. So first, let me break down why we need a primary and a secondary, and I'll kind of give you an example of the primary. So I'm going to hop onto my iPad here, and if you're listening, to audio only here, I'll kind of talk through this. But if you draw kind of a box, and there's 4 quadrants, right? So we have a box with four quadrants, and above the top left box, you write now, which is essentially within 90 days. And then you have the top right box above that, you write later, which is, essentially, I'd say 90 plus days to 24 months, right? And through the study, it was actually more 18 months. Right. So through the study, it was more about 18 months. And this study I heard on a podcast by Dean Jackson. I'll put a link below in the show notes where he interviewed Todd Herman, the creator of the 90-day year. And they were talking about Todd Herman's launch. And basically, they were looking at some of the numbers on like what percentage of people would convert after seeing the first launch. And at the time, Todd was only doing 1 launch a year. So if we have the quadrant, the top left column is now, and the bottom or the top right column is later, and then on the left side of the quadrants, we're going to write yes, which means they're going to buy, and then no, that they're not going to buy, kind of in that bottom row. We want to look at how many people are going to buy in 90 days, and how many people are not going to buy, and how many people are going to invest in a solution to the problem, well after 90 days and possibly even up to 2 years. Now, this study was done by a company that sells faucets, but they applied this data to a bunch of other industries, and they found that the same kind of percentages held true. So this is kind of food for thought and a model to think through of why you need a primary and a secondary sales funnel. So here's the dealio. Say I'll talk through the example first, and we'll apply it to your own business. But when it comes to faucets, this company went out and said, they reached out to people that had expressed interest, and they said, hey, obviously you were interested in buying a new faucet. We're just curious, like, have you we had seen that you had interest in buying a faucet. We just want to know, have you purchased a new faucet, right? And they check both now and then, they kind of check back frequently. And what they found was that 50% of the people that had expressed interest in a faucet, it might have been sinks or something, I forget exactly, 50% will never invested in a new faucet or a new sink ever. Not now, not later, right? It's been beyond 24 months. And so 50% of the leads, so assume you have 100 leads come into your world. It's safe to assume that at least 50% will never invest in a solution, not just from you, but not even to their problem within 18 to 24 months. So 50 of your 100 leads will not buy from you, not now, not later, and most likely won't even buy to solve that problem within the next 24 months. So just understand that. And so obviously that's the balance of 50% that will buy. So of that 50% that will invest in a solution or did buy a sink, right? You have the balance, the 15% of that balance is bought within 90 days of expressing that interest, and 85% bought between 90 days and 24 months. And the same data kind of actually played out for Todd in this podcast. So Todd sells an online course called 90 Day Year. And again, I'll link to the episode. You can go listen to it where they break this down. But Todd launched once a year. And what Todd found was that every lead that came in, or the leads that converted, experienced 2.4 launches before buying. Right? So you do the math. He only launches once a year. They've seen 2.4 launches. They've been in his world, watched him launch it at least twice, so approximately 24 months before actually buying it, right? And so what Dean said in this interview was, well, why don't you just launch one extra time? Because if they have to experience, if they're experiencing 2 launches, why don't you just do at least 2 launches in a year, and you shorten that to now 12, at least 12 months, right? For this 85% of people that were buying. And in Todd's case, like that number was still a pretty damn close to 85% of their sales were coming from people that had consumed 2.4 of his launches, aka have been following it for over 2 years, right? So the solution was, why don't you just add a new launch? And now he launches, I think it's evergreen now, but he, the first iteration after that interview, he was starting to do a June, July, like a mid-year launch, because originally it was the 90-day year. It starts in the beginning of the year, kind of get on the whole New Year's resolution hype. But like those 90 days can start at any point, really. So he started launching, and I believe now it's evergreen, right? So look, your primary funnel is designed to convert that 15%, those people that are going to invest in a solution to their problem within the next 90 days, right? And so there's going to be people that come into your world that are like ready, like, hey, you're speaking my language. I can tell that you have the solution. I want to work with you. Like, we want our primary sales funnel to convert those people and stay top of mind for those first 90 days, right? And so when we look at, common sales funnels, right? This is where, this is where you see your simple 2-step or, the simple funnel, where really it's oftentimes a webinar into application. As a service provider, this is really common. A great primary sales funnel. Another great one is a case study into an application, right? Like, those are 2 examples of a primary sales funnel, right? So let's just look at one of these. Let's break down one of them, right? So let's look at the webinar one, because that's a common one that everyone's talking about. And so you have your registration page, right? So you might have, this is where people are opting in for your webinar. You might have a little picture here with the opt-in button. Then you have, hey, thank you video. Thanks for, thanks for registering. Then you have your actual webinar room, right? This is where they will consume the webinar, whether it's live or evergreen. You have your video, and then eventually you have your button that will drive them to your application, which then puts them on the phone, right? Here's my phone, right? And so this is kind of the journey, right? When people are, when you're seeing a lot of these people teach you how to sell high ticket programs, they're teaching this simple webinar funnel, right? So this is, I'd say, like the minimum viable execution of your primary sales funnel. But here's the thing, like this webinar, so say they can, if it's on demand or whatever, like there's probably like either immediate to a 7 or 14 day follow-up sequence, which means people are buying, within one day to, up to 2 weeks, but you want to account for that 90-day window, right? So our primary sales funnel needs to count from day 0 to, really like 90 days, right? Because they're in our world for that long. And so there's going to be people that register that, we want to send emails, right, that get them to show up and watch the webinar. Then we're going to want to send emails, right, to people that attended that didn't apply, right? Some people are naturally going to watch this webinar, and when you say, hey, come over here and apply, they're going to move. They're going to move through this process, right? But a good percentage aren't. And so you want to have an email follow-up that continues to get them to, apply for the call, right? But guess what? There's going to be people that, that's obviously the people that, yes, go that route. There's still going to be people that no, that don't even apply ever. And you're going to want to drop them into a series of emails as well, right? Like, or not just emails, but, that's one thing. Emails, there's text messages, there's retargeting of Facebook ads, but this is kind of what we call like master follow-up, which is another key piece of this primary funnel. So master follow-up is like, okay, so if our webinar funnel is trying to get them to watch a webinar, the webinar is trying to get them to apply, well, we want to make sure that we have like a contingency plan for if they don't take those actions. So that's what we're talking about when we talk about a primary sales funnel, right? Is how do I make sure that we are moving those leads that are ready to buy and willing to buy, that are going to be likely to convert, that 15%? How do we move them as effectively as possible into a sales conversation? And then how do we follow up with those ones that aren't going to convert there, but might still convert within a 90-day window? What most people do is they kind of forget about those leads after the first 7 to 14 days. And now we have a leaky bucket. We're letting leads fall through the cracks. So it's really important to think about, all right, well, we have our primary sales funnel that is designed to convert those 15%. And then if they don't convert there, we still want to have a secondary sales funnel, right? So in the next episode, we'll be talking a little bit deeper about having a secondary sales funnel. So if you're in a position where you feel like you're capturing leads, you're letting leads fall through the cracks, and you want to set up a bulletproof primary and secondary selling system that's automated and streamlined to sell more of your programs and services, we'd love to chat with you. You can click the link below to schedule a call with our team. You're going to fill out an application, a couple questions, so we can learn more about you and hit the ground running on that scalability session, right? Now, if you're listening and you're in your car or whatever, just visit system.ly/apply, and you can grab a time on the calendar there. We look forward to chatting with you. And I hope you enjoyed this episode, understanding kind of the difference between primary and what will eventually be our secondary in the next episode. So you guys have a wonderful day, and we'll chat soon.